Hello there, everybody. Welcome on into today's video. Really appreciate taking time on your day, swing on over and checking it on out. We have GFRIEND Theory videos part 2. We got 3 videos on here, all from Bookish Theories. A lot of community members over in Discord said that they're pretty good videos to watch. So I have 3 of them on this playlist. I think I have some more coming up on some next playlists. And yeah, we're going to be checking out some Crossroads theories and a little Apple. We're going to get into Apple as well. So the first video, we're going to do a Tale of the Glass Bead previous story. We're going to check out like timeline and storyline, kind of Crossroad theories. We have another video, which is Crossroads meanings, explain lyrics and MV breakdown, analysts, all that fun stuff. You know, I love good analyzing of MV. And then we're going to do Apple lyrics and MV explain connections to the previous MVs and storylines, as well as connection. I was right, BTS and TXT. I think I said TNT, but it's TXT. That was close enough. Which is also like a multi-universe potentially for like Hybe slash, you know, all that fun stuff. Source music slash Hybe. So those are what we're going to be checking out. Now, here is the big thing. How do these, like this theory, connect to like yesterday's video when we were talking a little bit more along the lines of, is Anha is kind of like the eccentric a little bit of the GFRIEND like storyline. We also discussed it's kind of interesting how they're playing on in some ways a little of like an Anha Shinbi like kind of twin thing, of course, with their first name being the same. Just playing up on that just slightly. And is Anha potentially now in the spirit world, or is she in a dream world? There's evidence to support both. It's just a matter of, do the next set of MV slash theories going all the way to story like Season of Memories, if it will define whether or not we are in the, like if she's in the spirit world or if she is in the dream world. We'll find out. Once again, we're going to pause in between each video, kind of talk about everything, what you know, could be connected, what my thoughts are. Feel free, put your own theories and thoughts in the comments. I'd love to read them. I love reading those kind of things and seeing what you guys are cooking up theory-wise. Is it similar to what we're seeing here? Similar to like my little theories, etc. Everybody kind of has their own theories around this, and I don't think there is one right or wrong answer. It's just more of like, what does the evidence show us in these MVs to maybe swing towards one theory or another. And we're going to be coming on the back half here of MVs, so we will see if it defines a little bit more on what it is to an extent. I do like the theory from yesterday's video about a little bit more about the like the labyrinth, as well as like the dream world kind of like Inception type deal that we have going on, and how the girls all have like their own little powers that they gained in one video, like one MV, and now we're kind of expanding on that. That was a very interesting theory, and I'm keeping my mind open on a lot of the theories that we heard in yesterday's video to see if one kind of starts bringing true. Hi, all, you coming up? We're theorying today. Boop, boop, boop. Your tail's in the way. Hi. So we'll see if that actually like comes into play. Hi, buddy. Hi. Good kitty. Yeah. Hello. So we're gonna do the 3 videos. Like I said, we are gonna stop, pause. Ooh, slip right down there, bud. And check it out. So grab a drink, grab a snack. Let's do it. Okay. Yeah? What you talking about? Sir? Tale of Glass Bead, timeline explained. Yes. Okay.
Hello and welcome back to Bookish Theories. In today's video, I would like to talk about GFRIEND's Tale of the Glass Bead, focusing on the timeline of the storyline up to this point and what we could expect from the upcoming comeback. Since Source Music has been recently acquired by Big Hit, I think it's fair to assume that their story will be somehow connected with both BTS and Tomorrow by Togethers. I'm already working on a separate video about that, so today what we're gonna do is to focus on a general overview of GFRIEND's timeline and setup in order to get the full picture while we wait for the comeback. Now, despite being a very short video, Tale of the Glass Bead already gave us a lot of clues about the idea they're going for here. The girls start off as friends. They are born and raised together. And for the longest time, their friendship seems to be nothing more than a source of joy and happiness. Things change when they visit a lake that gives them special abilities. Each of them appreciates their own power, but cannot help but feeling envious about the others. And it's this envy that leads them to their ultimate downfall. The friendship that once united them is now distorted into a source of misery. And it's only when they are lonely and separated that they finally realize how their envy ruined their life as well as their friendship. The video ends with the girls wishing to go back in time and meet at a crossroads, which presumably is gonna be the starting point from which the new storyline will connect with both BTS and TXT. Now, if we take a look at the music video GFRIEND released up to this point, the timeline we are being presented in the Tale of the Glass Bead appears to be linear up until we get to Navillera. In Glass Bead, Me Gustas Tu, and Rough, we see how their life was before they got their powers.
Young, happiness,
this is basically the stage of the narrative when we are introduced to their characters and relationship. And the songs portray their youth and highlight their friendship as well as their happiness. When we get to Navillera, however, things start to get a bit tricky. In the trailer, we see this video as the starting point of their troubles. And this makes sense because the butterfly that is referenced in the song is an animal that generally symbolizes change and transformation.
Now, we're talking about like the butterfly effect.
Is the first song that mentions envy in the lyrics. So it makes sense that what we see in the video is the initial stage of the conflict that will later unfold in Fingertip. Up to this point, however, we still lack the most important part of the story, which is the girls actually getting their powers. This is the reason why the conflict exists in the first place, but neither Navillera nor Fingertip actually shows it, which means that between Rough and Navillera there is a missing piece. This piece is actually filled by Love Whisper, which is the song where we see them going to the lake and acquire their abilities. This change in the narrative is also confirmed by the end of Fingertip, where we see Eunha going back to sleep and the clock going back in time. Now, by moving Love Whisper between Rough and Navillera, the story actually becomes pretty clear. In Glass Bead, Me Gustas Tu, and Rough, the girls are friends. In Love Whisper, they go on a journey and get their powers. In Navillera, they get envious, and in Fingertip, they start fighting. Fingertip here represents the climax of the conflict because even if what we see happens in a dream, the conflict itself is happening in real life as well, which is something also confirmed by Summer Rain. In that song, the girls compare love to a summer rain that is as strong as it is short-lived. And the video shows them sadly reminiscing about the past while being grateful for the moments they spent together. These feelings will be later developed in Time for the Moon Night, which is arguably the most difficult video to explain.
Yes,
now,
it
when
is.
the song first came out, there were a lot of theories about the story they were trying to portray here. Some people thought that the song was about mourning and moving on from the death of a loved one, while others saw it as a portrayal of mental illness that caused the girls to have hallucinations about each other. All these theories were actually really well done and extremely plausible. But now we know that all their videos are connected, so in the light of the information the trailer gave us, the song can be seen as the aftermath of the conflict portrayed in Navillera and Fingertip. The lyrics here focus a lot on the themes
This
of
is the
memory
one scene,
and
though,
longing.
there's always, like,
and the
kind of
video
like,
portrays the girls, and more specifically Unha, trying to move on from the memory of their friendship. So, does this mean that all the theories were wrong? Well,
No.
not exactly, actually. You see, even knowing what we know now, I still think that the explanations I just mentioned have some truth to them. Since their friendship was such an important part of their identity, them mourning its loss actually implies that a part of them died when they got separated. If you remember, in Fingertip, some of the members actually died in the dream.
Something.
So the hallucinations
like
could be seen as the two
dream
worlds actually merging together in their minds. The lyrics here are particularly interesting because they actually hint at this possibility by cluing us in on what is about to happen next. Despite their loneliness and sadness, the girls find comfort in the memory of the past, and even if they know that their fantasy will disappear soon, when the time for the moonlight comes, they will meet again in their dreams. Now, this is important because from this point on, the narrative shifts from the real world to the dream world. If you look closely, starting from Sunny Summer, the story is not focused on reality anymore, but on their dreams, because through their dreams, they are able to be together again. If we take a look at Memoria and Sunrise, for instance, both songs seem to confirm this as well. In Memoria, the girls are able to interact with one another when they are asleep. And in Sunrise, the opening tells us that they had a dream where they could be together again for a short time. Here we see that in their individual scenes, they are alone and reminiscing about the past. So we can assume that the scenes that shows them together are not reality. They are a memory that they are reliving in a dream. So when they fall asleep in the dream, they wake up in real life, alone and sad as they were before. When the video shows their dreams, we actually get some references to their past videos, further reinforcing the idea that in the story, memory and dream are closely connected to one another. This is important because the separation between the real world and the dream world could possibly be an important aspect of the comeback, and Flower seems to confirm this as well. Now, in Flower, the girls are once again in the dream world, which is something they admit right at the beginning of the song. What is interesting here is that in the lyrics, they compare the dream to a labyrinth that they cannot escape from. Now, this is very telling because the idea that they don't want to escape the fantasy implies that now they are getting lost in the labyrinth, and I think that Fever deals with this topic as well. In that song, they are overpowered by love. The happiness they feel is once again like a summer dream, but they don't care about the fact that this is not reality.
This is why I think it's more of a like a dream world that we're
what we are
living
seeing
in here
is like a dream loop that makes them relive their memories and keeps them trapped in the labyrinth because of the happiness these fantasies entail.
The whole Inception
when
thing
they dream,
is actually
they can go
like
back in time and relive the past. And even if this gives them happiness, the more time they spend in the dream, the more they risk to get lost in it. This idea is also foreshadowed in Falling Light, which is the latest song that they released. Now in Falling Light, they actually confirm the idea that their dreams allow them to go back in time by reminiscing about the past. But in the lyrics, they also compare themselves to a lost child, which is something that further reinforces the idea that they are lost in the labyrinth of their dream. Now, on the GFRIEND Wikipedia page, it is hinted that the title track of Labyrinth will be called Crossroads. So this implies that in the comeback we'll be seeing a new beginning for them. That is them meeting again at the crossroads they mention in the trailer. This crossroads could be a place where reality and dream actually merge together, thus allowing them to go back in time in real life the way they do in their dreams. So that's it from me today. I'm already working on a big hit multiverse video that I cannot wait to show you guys. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. As always, thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.
That's actually very well done. Very well explained too. Bookish Theories and I same wavelength here. Because in yesterday's video, I was like, you know what? I'm not quite sure the whole spirit world is the path that we're like theory-wise on. I think it's dream worlds. And obviously, I mean, they said it right there. There's a ton of dream references. So, especially with if you think about the first theory video we did with like Fingertip Explained and how there is a lot of like kind of like dream at like different dream worlds with the different beads, etc. And then we have like the conflict between all of them in that MV. It does make sense in like the storyline of how we got here. And I like how they explained the time for Moonlight. Like that MV is wild because you in a sense when you're first watching it, you're like, yeah, maybe Anha is like dead. But if you think about it in the aspect of mourning loss of what was potentially, especially with all the little hints with the different pieces from different MVs around Yuju, that that connects a little bit more on my dream theory than it does with the spirit worlds on Anha's dead theory, right? So with like mourning, like them like Yuju, like we're almost like mourning, reminiscing about the past, and those were like little placements of like little objects from past MVs. That kind of like ties in there. Hey Betty. We have like a definitely a little bit more hints on that dream. I love how they showed like Love Whisper. If you think of it story wise, should not be where it is. It should be actually right before Fingertip. No, actually it should be right before Navalera, right? That where the placement was, like right in that area versus after. That that shows a little bit of them kind of like gaining their powers to an extent, and like the turn of the envy, potential hate that comes into play with Apple, right? Apple, there's that balance of good and evil, like the envy type taking over. So once we get to Apple, I wonder if that will kind of all connect. So I was wondering how the kind of like a spirit worlds would connect to Apple. My kind of like dream world theory fits better into that narrative that personally I think. I mean, let me know your thoughts. You guys might have different thoughts than me. But I I think that track of my mind here, and especially after watching that kind of like that hits a little bit more core theory wise. We'll see, because we're gonna do the Crossroads lyric and MV breakdown analyst right now. See if anything switches up, changes.
Hello and welcome back to Bookish
Theories.
Through. In today's video, I would like to talk about GFRIEND's Crossroads, focusing on a little breakdown and analysis of the lyrics and the storyline portrayed in the music video. This is GFRIEND's first comeback since Source Music was acquired by Big Hit, and you can already see some callbacks and possible connections with both BTS and Tomorrow By Together storylines. For the time being, it looks like these connections are used more like a setup for what's to come rather than actual proof that their storyline will actually interact with one another. So today, we're gonna focus on GFRIEND and their story. Now, in many respects, Crossroads is the perfect continuation of the storyline that was already introduced in A Tale of the Glass Bead. In the trailer, we are told that the girls grew up together. They were friends and happy to be with each other. But things change when they go on a journey and a magical lake gives them powers. While each of them are happy with their abilities, they cannot help but feeling envious of the others. And because of this envy, the girls end up fighting and get separated. The trailer ends with them wishing to go back in time as they stand at a crossroads, and the title track actually takes off from there. Following the events of the trailer, Crossroads is a song that deals with the themes of regret, memory, and their desire to reconnect with one another. As the lyrics describe their sorrow and disbelief regarding the mistakes they made in the past, the girls here use music as a medium to find each other in the labyrinth they are lost into. In the song, the focus is on a singing star, a guide if you will, that is visible in the sky and that they use to interact with one another as they try to find a way to meet again. Judging by the lyrics, it seems like the labyrinth the girls are stuck into is a dream limbo of sorts, where time is still and they end up in the same place despite their effort to go back and forth. If you look closely, even if the song is called Crossroads, the lyrics never mention it and the girls never meet. And this is because now the story is still
the loss
unfolding.
and longing,
Despite their
standing
desire
still,
to be together
going back and
fix
forth,
the past,
that can be
there is still no resolution to their problem. And the video further reinforces this idea by showing the girls constantly trying to reach out but failing in the process. This is a concept that was already foreshadowed back in Rough. In that song, the girls describe themselves as parallel lines that try to approach but keep on missing one another. And Crossroads seems to reprise this concept by describing a time loop where they go back to fix the past but end up making new mistakes that keep them apart. Now, as it always happens when it comes to time travel, things can get very confusing very fast. So in order to get the sense of what's going on in the video, the first thing that we need to do is to understand the basic rules they are following and continue from there. If we look at the MV in relation to their past songs, there are some recurring symbols that tend to stand out. On the one hand, we have the butterfly, a symbol of change and transformation. Then we have the clock, which obviously represents them going back in time. And last but not least, we have the glass bead, which is a symbol that is also featured in BTS and Tomorrow by Together's videos. Now, the glass bead is very important here because it's an object that GFRIEND has been using since their debut. In glass bead, the girls compare themselves to the bead, stressing the idea that they are not as fragile as they seem. And in fingertip, when the girls look at them, they appear inside of the beads, thus suggesting that the object is a symbol of their identity. In the story, the glass beads are the girls themselves, a representation of their power, their connection, and their inner selves. But in Crossroads, we see that Una's bead is turning black, thus confirming that the issue is yet to be resolved and that they have to hurry before it's too late. This is where time travel comes into play. Now, in the video, Una is once again the protagonist. Much like Jin in BTS's storyline, she seems to be the one in charge of going back in time in the attempt to fix their relationship. But as we see in the video, things are easier said than done. At the beginning, the video opens with Una reliving the same scene we saw in Fingertip. Right off the bat, this is very important because the visuals not only suggest that Una is able to go back in time when she sleeps, but also that time travel takes place when the girls interact with the butterfly. As I mentioned earlier, the butterfly is a symbol of change, so it makes sense that in the story, the animal is used to signify a change in the narrative. As the video progresses, however, we also see that Una has 3 butterflies in a case. This implies that it's not the first time that she has done this, but the 3rd. And the fact that there is an empty space suggests that she only has another chance before everything is lost. This idea is also confirmed by the glass bead turning black and by a specific scene in the second half of the video, where we see Una actually time traveling in 3 different eras. Now, this part is very interesting for a couple of reasons.
Because you have fingertip.
On the one hand, we see that every time she time travels, the destruction that surrounds her gets worse, thus reinforcing the idea that their chances are running out. On the other, however, this scene is so cool because if we look at the styling of her hair, we can actually trace the videos where she travels back in time. The first time that happens is back in Fingertip, which is also confirmed by the ending of the video itself. The second time instead is during Time for the Moon Night, where we see the story jumping back and forth between them being together and them getting separated. While the 3rd time is the one that we see in Crossroads, which once again appears to be a failure. Much like what we see happen in Time for the Moon Knight, the timeline here jumps from the happy past to the sad present. And the main conflicts seem to be between Yuju and Eunji and Shinbi and Una. While Sowon and Yerin don't seem to be involved, they still look affected by the others fighting. But by the end of the video, the narrative doesn't offer any resolution. This could imply that in the future we will see Una going back for the first time in the last attempt to fix the past. To know whether she will succeed, however, we'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please think about liking and subscribing. As always, thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye!
Oh yeah, Apple, danger. Yeah, that Crossroads, I think, for me, really solidifies more of like that dream world type situation. If you think of it, it's very Inception-esque with like the going back and kind of changing things. Especially if she does have like that little power to maybe go back in time. I love that little scene in Crossroads where she falls off and it's the same little fall as Fingertip, and then you have the clock going around signifying that she's kind of going back in time, and when she lands on that bed it's the same position as it was in Fingertip, and then she's trying to like get everybody back together. For me, it just keeps on with that point of it is more of a dream world where they're like meeting up and connecting and reliving some of the past versus like a spirit world. So like that dream escape, especially with a lot of the lyrics. There's a lot in the lyrics. There's a lot of dream hints in there. And Apple is going to be the turn, though, of how this whole theory of dream world plays out. So we do have the good and evil play here, where Anha's bead turns like that reddish color. So we'll see if the envy, so, I mean, it's more like green with envy, but like that red hatred almost takes over. And then you have Mago, which is just a loop. Like, who knows? That's just like, that's another interesting one, which we do have a video of that coming up. So yeah, my dream world theory is I'm locking it in a little more and more as we're watching these. Now this is a longer video because it does tie in a BTS and
Hello, and welcome back to Bookish Theories. In today's video, I would like to talk about GFRIEND's Apple, focusing on a little breakdown and analysis of the lyrics, the music video, and on how the song is connected to GFRIEND's storyline and the Big Hit multiverse. Now, Apple is a song that deals with the themes of temptation and the process of embracing this temptation without turning back. According to what the girls said during the press conference,
Adam and Eve.
The concept for this comeback follows the story of a girl who is able to find confidence in her desires after being initially overwhelmed by temptation. And right off the bat, this is very interesting because what this statement implies is that in the song, temptation is used as a medium of transformation. Now, in the video, this journey through temptation is portrayed by mixing different types of symbols and imagery, because if on the one hand, the main focus of this comeback is on the sirens and the apple, on the other, the MV also has a lot of references to many other sources. There's quite a lot to unpack here, but in order to get a clear picture of what's going on, the first thing that we need to do is to pay attention to the trailer and the setting of the trailer, because those alone are an essential aspect of the story as a whole. You see, according to what we saw in Tale of the Glass Bead Butterfly Effect, the journey that leads the girls to the apple tree begins when the path divides in two and they run towards the blue light. Now, the fact that this journey takes place inside of a forest is immediately very telling, because the archetype of the forest dark is a very common symbol that represents the darker aspects of our unconscious. This is a symbol that is also used by Tomorrow Bad Together in parts of the story that are meant to convey a sense of mystery, dread, and danger. But in the context of GFRIEND's apple, the closest analogy that we can get can actually be found in BTS. You see, if on the one hand, in Map of the Soul, the forest is the location where we can find BTS's shadow, which, much like the sirens, can be seen as the more monstrous side of a person that is repressed in our unconscious. On the other, in Blood, Sweat and Tears and Butterfly, the boys use the archetype of the forest dark as a metaphor for them giving in to temptation.
Oh, they also have butterflies in there.
As we'll see in a second, this is only one of the many parallels that Apple has with Blood, Sweat and Tears, but the connection with Butterfly here is an interesting one. Not only because of the recurring presence of the butterfly itself, but also because in that song, BTS say that they shouldn't go into the forest because this is their Kafka on the Shore. Now, Kafka on the Shore is a novel by Murakami Haruki that heavily influenced BTS's storyline since the very beginning. And I feel the need to mention this because GFRIEND's storyline seems to be drawing inspiration from it as well. Much like what we saw in Crossroads, Apple, and Butterfly Effect, Kafka on the Shore not only has time travel and portrays the forest as a labyrinth where the protagonist gets lost into, but also features the butterfly as a symbol of transformation that initially tempts Kafka to follow it into the forest. What's interesting here is that in the novel, the characters themselves describe their story as a metaphor. And in this metaphor, the labyrinth in the forest is defined as a principle that exists inside of an individual, meaning that the journey that Kafka goes through in the forest is an inner journey that reflects the adventure that takes place in reality. Now, if we apply the same logic to Apple, this means that the events that take place in the video portray an inner journey that could be considered as a metaphor for what happens in reality.
Okay, I can see that.
And this makes sense because the entire plot of the video revolves around them being lured in by the song of the sirens and biting the apple that will lead these sirens to take over them. This is basically a metaphorical journey that shows the girls falling into temptation and awakening a part of themselves that until now was repressed. But the problem here is that at the end of the video, we also see that the butterflies the girls followed at the beginning of this journey were freed by the very part of themselves that is awakened at the end.
And so then you have the
what
red
is happening here? Are the butterflies leading them in the wrong direction? And how do we fit Apple into the timeline? Well, let's take a look. Now, in the mini-book that can be found in the Labyrinth album, the story says that GFRIEND comes from a village where all girls are born with a clear glass bead. When they grow up, the girls receive a magic power from a lake, and even if all of them are happy with their abilities, they also start to get envious about the others' powers. Now, this is basically the story that we were told in the first Tale of the Glass Bead video, right? But one of the illustrations that can be found in the book is actually very telling, because as Una walks in the darkness followed by a butterfly, her shadow turns into a monster as it holds the glass bead in its hands. Now, flash forward to Song of the Sirens, where the second story foreshadows that the envy that caused them to fight might actually have had tragic consequences as well, which incidentally is the same thing that we saw back in Fingertip. In this story, Una wants to find a way to fix the situation, and while she is overpowered by sadness, a mysterious voice tells her to look for the blue butterfly to become more powerful. This suggestion leads Una to a bookshop in the middle of the forest, and here the owner actually provides new information about the village. In the story, the man says that once upon a time, the village the girls come from was called the village of the blue butterfly, and the power that these blue butterflies provided gave people a very happy life. When some of the citizens started to use the butterflies for evil, however, the butterflies themselves disappeared. But in the story, the man also says that the butterflies are not gone for good, because they are waiting for special people that can handle the power that they are able to provide.
Okay.
Now, at this point, the man looks at Una's glass bead and decides that she could actually be one of the people that the butterflies were waiting for. So he gives her a box with 5 butterflies that give her the ability to go back in time and save her friends. This is the same box that we saw back in Crossroads, so now we know where those butterflies actually came from. But as we see in the video, this power comes with a price, because each time Una uses a butterfly, her glass bead becomes darker and darker. According to the bookshop owner, if Una ends up using all the butterflies before succeeding in her quest, something terrible will happen that she will not be able to control. But Una decides to take the butterflies anyway because the safety of her friends is more important than her own. The story ends with Una leaving the shop as another girl arrives, so even if we still don't know who that girl is, this scene implies that Una might not be the only one who is trying to fix the situation. Now, if we take all this information into account and try to fit I-DLE into the narrative, I think that even if what we saw in the video could fit the unspeakable consequences that Una was warned about by the owner of the bookshop, I-DLE is actually portraying the events that we saw at the end of the very first book. That is, the girls falling into temptation and being taken over by the envy that they feel for one another. Much like what we see in I-DLE and Butterfly Effect, the illustration shows the shadow holding the glass bead and a young Una walking in the darkness. But the real giveaway here is the butterfly because, according to the story, at this point the butterflies are still nowhere to be found. So why there is a butterfly there? Well, here's the thing. Even if the butterfly is a universal symbol of transformation, in GFRIEND's storyline it's also a symbol of magical power. The butterflies give power to the villagers and later on give more power to Una to travel back in time. But since the bookshop owner said that she is one of the special ones, this implies that the power of the butterfly was inside of her all along, that is, even before the man gives Una the butterfly box. This means that the butterflies that we see in Crossroads are different from the butterflies that we see in I-DLE and Butterfly Effect, because if the first one are real physical objects, the second ones are a metaphor for the power that Una is looking for. If you go back and watch the trailer again, even if the video shows Una running after the butterflies, the narration not only doesn't mention them, but also says that the girls run towards the blue light. This means that at the very beginning, the inciting incident is that the girls ran after power and it's that power that caused their downfall. You see, the whole point of the butterfly effect is that a small event can cause huge repercussions, so them being jealous of each other caused them to fall into temptation and seek more power even if they shouldn't have.
We see that, like the kickoff
this implies that this desire
really
did come from a part of themselves that was hidden inside of them. But when they eventually embrace this temptation and actually act on it, this part of themselves reveals itself in the form of the sirens. The reason why the video shows that the siren frees the butterflies after Una bites the apple is because what we are seeing is a time loop. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you will. And this idea would also explain why so far Una seems unable to fix the problems that the girls have in reality.
She bites the apple, she turns into the siren lets go of the butterflies, the butterfly chases younger
to up the others.
Unha,
the very
and then
idea of
Unha
finding the
the
butterflies comes from a whisper that she hears in the forest. So it's still the siren that is leading the game, only that Una doesn't realize it yet. What Una has to do here is to learn to use the power that she has the right way, but the siren in her is working against her, so she keeps failing and the glass pit keeps getting darker in real life as well. Now at this point we still don't know what would happen if Una failed in her quest,
really dives
but the
into,
fact that the glass bead is turning black could imply that if she doesn't succeed, the siren will take over for good. And this would also explain why the siren led her to the shop in the first place. The monster that Envy has awakened is trying to get out, and the only way to stop this from happening is for Una to realize that the real enemy to face is inside of herself. Now, the idea of the protagonist of a story who has to confront their dark side in order to get to the resolution is actually very important because, as it turns out, this is the same inner journey that takes place in both BTS and Tomorrow By Together storylines. You see, if we take a look at the imagery GFRIEND share with BTS and TXT, one of the aspects that connects these three groups in the multiverse is that even if they are at different stages of their adventure, all three of them seem to be going through a metaphorical journey that follows the same structure of the archetype of the hero's journey. Now, this archetype is very complex to explain, so I'm not going in detail about this, but on a general level, the hero's journey includes three main stages. The first involves the hero leaving to accomplish their quest. The second involves the hero's descent into the underworld, while the third involves the hero's return to the world and their final transformation as a new individual. This means that the hero's journey can be seen as a cycle of life, death, and rebirth that could also symbolize a person facing their inner shadows, accepting them, and rising once again as an enlightened individual. But if BTS has accomplished this metaphorical journey and supposedly reached their goal in On and Stay Gold, when it comes to the actual storylines set in their respective universes, all three groups still have a long way to go because the shadowy part of themselves still rule the lives of the characters. This is because in all their cases they lack self-awareness, or at the very least they have very little understanding of what's going on. If GFRIEND are lost in the labyrinth, Jin has to find the map of the soul in order to navigate in his universe, and Tomorrow by Together are stuck in a maze in the mirror that Soobin turned real. But the problem here is that none of this mess will be solved until they realize that the problems they face in reality are consequences of the issues that they have to overcome inside of themselves. As Kafka on the Shore says, the principle of the labyrinth is inside of the individual, but the labyrinth we have on the inside is linked to the labyrinth of life that exists on the outside. They are one, the reflection of the other, so as metaphorical as they can be, the events that we see in Apple do have repercussions in the story set in reality as well. It makes a lot of sense, actually. In videos like Time for the Moon Knight, Fingertip, and Crossroads, we already got several clues about how envy affects their life going forward. But Apple portrays the literal downfall that leads to these events, so let's dive right in and see what's going on. At the beginning, the video opens with Una picking the apple from the tree and taking a bite. Now, the idea of them biting the apple as a symbol of them falling into temptation has very biblical connotations here, because it heavily recalls the imagery of Eve being tempted by the snake and biting the fruit of the tree of knowledge. The whole concept of them being taken over by their inner monster, however, is expressed in several different ways, because even if the focus is on the figure of the siren, the way these sirens are portrayed changes from scene to scene. Sometimes we see them as witches, sometimes we see them as fairy-like maidens, and sometimes even as ghostly shadows that lurk in the deepest parts of our unconscious. And even if at first glance these representations may seem a bit random, in reality they are far from it, because throughout history, sirens have been portrayed in all these different ways as well.
Correct.
You see, even if in modern days the siren is often seen as a creature that is closely associated to the mermaid, historically their representation has changed from normal maidens to women with wings to women with fish tails to nymphs living in the woods. But no matter which story we are talking about here, the only element that always remained constant is that sirens use their beautiful voices to attract their victims and lead them to their deaths. Now, this ability obviously makes the siren a great symbol of sensuality and temptation. And even if Apple heavily focuses on these aspects, the alluring nature of the song should not distract you from the fact that the song of the siren is first and foremost a song of death. You see, the Song of the Siren is a song that leads the victim from one realm to the next. And in this context, this is very important because it connects us right back to the hero's journey to the underworld, which implies a metaphorical first death which leads the individual to a new rebirth. If we compare GFRIEND sirens to BTS's Black Swans, for instance, the role of these creatures are exactly the same, because the Siren Song and the Swan Song are both songs that foreshadow a rite of passage involving death. These songs imply a literal journey of the soul, and back in ancient Greece, the connection between the sirens and death was also conveyed by actually placing these sirens at a crossroads, which, I don't know about you, but to me sure seems very fitting with the overall concept GFRIEND is going for here. In the Odyssey, for instance, Circe tells Odysseus that he will find the sirens when the road divides in two. And in the myth of Ar, which is a story by Plato about a man who goes on a journey in the afterlife and comes back to tell the tale, the sirens can be found at a crossroads between heaven and hell. You see, the bottom line here is that in Greek mythology, sirens basically play the role of mediators between different worlds. So according to which type of siren you follow, this siren will lead you to the path that is actually meant for you. In GFRIEND's case, for instance, the Song of the Sirens leads them to a metaphorical death that frees the very sirens that they're following. And throughout the video, this idea is conveyed by Una losing consciousness after biting the apple, by Yerin waking up again and following the butterfly in the wrong direction, and by the final shot of the Black Witches arising and sitting on their thrones. What the song is portraying here is a journey that leads the girls to the death of their innocence and to their dark side taking over them. And even if the lyrics imply an initial sense of doubt about the road they're taking, the girls eventually embrace this change because the storyline GFRIEND are telling us is also a coming-of-age story that is meant to show their journey from youth to womanhood. Them allowing their innocence to die and the fear and excitement that are associated with this process are part of a transformation that is as overwhelming as it is natural. And even if the lyrics heavily focus on the sensual nature of this awakening, when it comes to the storyline, the song also provides more specific clues about the roles that the girls are playing. If you look closely, at the beginning the sirens are portrayed as white witches, which could be a reference to the ambiguous nature of the monster, but also a possible callback to the beginning of the story where the girls acquired their powers from the lake.
Yep.
Like the bookshop owner foreshadows in the mini-book, this scene implies that the magic the girls have inside of them is not inherently evil, but has the potential to become it when they fall into temptation and allow their envy to take over them. This idea is perfectly conveyed in the scene of the dining room, which represents the part of the story where they literally get intoxicated by envy. The imagery of the girls drinking, eating flowers, and smoking butterflies here is meant to convey a sense of confusion and intoxication. And much like what we see in Yuju's scene, when the envy they feel for one another blinds them, they end up alone because the power of the butterflies has taken over their innocence completely. As the video shows us, this is the moment in time where Yerin gets lost in the story. And if Fingertip and Crossroads already foreshadowed this idea, the downfall that the girls experience in that scene is also reinforced by several callbacks to Blood, Sweat and Tears and the Wings era. In both instances, we see one of the members biting the apple, we see them drinking and getting intoxicated, we see references to the swing, which imply that this is a moment where they're still going back and forth between childhood and adulthood, and most importantly, we see that temptation is sealed with a kiss, which implies the death of innocence and the awakening of the dark side of themselves. Apple and Blood, Sweat and Tears here show the group's first experience with temptation in the very same way and using the very same symbols. But in contrast to BST, Apple also shows us that the Black Witches are not set free by temptation itself, but by the girls acting on this temptation and eventually bewitching one another through magic. Now, if we apply this scene to the storyline, this means that at some point, envy led the girls to actually hurt each other using their powers. And if Fingertip already foreshadowed this event by showing Shinbi killing Yerin by mistake, Apple reinforces this idea by showing the source of temptation literally bursting into flames after the girls use magic on each other. At this point, things start to get interesting
of the hair
because not only Shinbi is revealed to be the Red Witch, but we also see that she's the one who gives Una the red bead, meaning that she is the siren that triggered Una's transformation and the death of her innocence.
Well, yeah,
now, in contrast to Una, who bites the apple, Shinbi actually doesn't. She just plays with it, which could imply that in the context of the storyline, the main source of conflict may be that Una becomes envious of Shinbi's power and literally bites into this envy by allowing her shadow to take control. This idea is once again confirmed by both Fingertip and Crossroads, where we see the two of them fighting and Yerin's death being caused by their conflict. But the fact that Shinbi is the Red Witch here could also imply that in comparison to the others, her power might have been stronger and darker to begin with. If we take
I
a
can
look
see
at
that.
the mini books, one of the girls is actually portrayed with a bigger shadow than the others. And in the second story, she's also the same girl that shows up at the bookshop
I was
right
just about
after
to say, I
Una
wonder if Shinbi was
leaves.
the other girl.
Now, if we assume that
going
this girl is
into-
actually Shinbi, this could mean that in the story, Shinbi's Siren version could be the one who triggered all the events in the first place. And even if for now this is just a guess, the fact that she's the one who dances the dance of fire when the witching hour descends implies that this could actually be the case. You see, the dance of fire here is a very important clue, because if we go back and take a look at the multiverse, both BTS and Tomorrow by Together have a similar dance that symbolizes the freeing of their inner monster or shadow. In Eternally, for instance, TXT say that the night the rain blazed the light, this rain of fire is overlapped with a dance that is able to free nightmares. BTS instead not only mention a last dance in blood, sweat and tears, but they also use this image as a metaphor for their first death in Black Swan. The dance that really seals the deal, however, is the dance of fire that we see in On, which they perform to symbolize their descent into the underworld and the end of their inner world that anticipates their rebirth. In all these cases, this connection is also reinforced by the use of the thorns and the horns, both of which could be seen as a callback to the crown of thorns of Jesus Christ, which Jung uses as a symbol for the death of the innocent and for the struggle and hardship this innocent has to endure in order to be born again. If in BTS the crown of thorns is center stage during their dance of fire, in GFRIEND we see the thorns filling up the castle, Yuju with a crown of thorns, and a winged figure with a crown of thorns during the live stages.
What a
the
great
reason
stage.
why I'm also including the horns in this
So many great
context
stages
is
for
because
Apple.
in Tomorrow by Together the horns actually turn into a crown. But in Eternally, the crown Yeonjun is wearing is filled with thorns to symbolize once again the death of the innocent. In all these cases, the dance of fire, the thorns, and the horns portray the very same process, that is, them going through the inferno of their passions and being taken over by them in a moment of weakness. As On shows us, however, for the hero to complete their quest, this metaphorical death has to be overcome. But for the heroes to do so, they have to confront the monster and actually realize that it's none other than themselves.
Yep.
In GFRIEND's storyline, however, for now the Sirens are winning. So to know what happens next, we'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please think about liking and subscribing. As always, thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye bye!
You know, here we are. Okay. It's all coming together now in my brain. This is a good one. I really liked this Apple lyric and MV explained. I do like the kind of connections. If you're thinking multiverse wise, there's some great good connections there. But if you're focusing more on GFRIEND itself, the fingertip MV is really kind of like the turning point here, I think, for a lot of things. So especially when we were watching the first one, the fingertip explained video, where they were talking about Shinbi and Eunha kind of wanting two different things from the butterfly. That I think that plays a lot as we get more towards Apple. Shinbi, we were also talking, but they were also talking in that video about how Shinbi wants to use the butterfly to move time forward into more of keeping the adulthood, where Eunha wants to get the potential butterfly and turn back time and have everybody remember the innocence, that type of feeling from childhood. And you can see that kind of dynamic between the two. And that also plays on Crossroads. You see them fighting a lot in Crossroads. I feel as though, yes, Eunha, I think, is the main protagonist in it, but you also have Shinbi as well. Kind of they're going head to head, and it really plays on that kind of, I wouldn't say twin, but kind of that vibe. and we were talking about, you know, like with them having the same name, etc., etc., just in real life, they kind of like play on that a little bit. The way that we get from fingertip to apple is very interesting. I still think there's a lot of dream aspects here, and within those dreams, as Eunha is trying to use the butterflies to go back in time and change things, I feel as though she's making things worse. Poor girl. And we see more and more of everybody's envy starting to grow with each other, and a lot more divide between all the girls. And you do have some pairings here and there, like in Crossroads. What is it? Yuju and Umji have like that little bit of a fight. And of course you have Eunha and Shinbi having the fight. Or Yaren and so on are just kind of like, what is happening? Please. I feel as though Yaren is just trying to be like, hey, guys, chill out. Because you see that in Fingertip. She's like kind of with Shinbi, and then all of a sudden she's kind of with like Eunha, like trying to get her not to like jump off or fall off or something, or kind of lean toward more that side, and then Shinbi accidentally shoots her. There's that whole thing. She's kind of like the middleman in a way. And you see so on throughout, especially with the Time for the Moon Night consoling individual members randomly throughout, to end with Sunrise. Actually more with Sunrise than with Time for the Moon Night. So like that's kind of hard play, but I feel as though as we start going through, they all kind of start feeling that envy for each other as we're going through all these like kind of like different dream escapes, that Inception type. And then we get to Apple, and that's where the temptation, and like I like how in this video there's that play with like Shinbi, like how strong maybe her powers are, with the temptation of coming into like that siren side versus the white witch side. And you have like the white witch, dark witch type, and her, that one scene, it's the apple scene with Shinbi and Eunha. That's like really kind of like the tying scene, I think, for me. It's a wild scene, but them like kind of like kissing the apple together, it's almost like they're both accepting like the envy and that portion, that siren side. And then right after, you see Eunha bite into the apple, and then things turn from there. And it will be interesting to kind of figure out how Mago plays into this all. I kind of have a gut feeling on how my theory goes for Seasons of Memory and how we kind of wrap it up, but really Mago is going to be the interesting one, and how that ties into this storyline. Now tomorrow we're going to be doing a good or evil, like everything in the GFRIEND universe, what we have so far, etc. Everybody says it's a fantastic little video. It's about 40 minutes long. So we're gonna watch that, and then on Friday we will check out the last video, which has Mago. It also has Season of Memories. They're not very long videos on those two, but we'll see. We'll talk about it, and we'll kind of wrap up the theory on that video. But let me know your thoughts. Kind of very interested in seeing your theories. If you have different theories, if you're kind of going through the same kind of like what is happening moments with me, I'm now firmly standing on this is not a spirit world that we're in. We are in a dream world, or we're passing through dream worlds versus spirit world. I don't think Eunha's dead. I know originally there was a lot of times I said she was. I don't think she is. I think she's just passing through time. And that signifies in Crossroads with the butterfly kind of going through. And that's why sometimes they can't find her, etc., etc. There's a bunch of stuff like that. So that's kind of where my theory is leading me towards. And we'll wrap up the theory on Friday once we watch all the videos. But thank you, everybody, for joining in, hanging out with me today. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. I know these are a little long ones. That's why I broke it up into 4 pieces, because I knew we'd be in for a little bit of a ride. So thank you once again. You all have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll catch you on the next one. Later.